Well met, everyone. I am Rich the Lich. Today is video number 1, the first of hopefully many videos within my new video series called Fun Fights. So, you can use a different adjective if you want. When we talk fights, encounters, the time that happens when you tell your players, roll initiative. You can say, I want memorable fights. I want interesting fights. I want exciting fights, challenging fights, whatever word you want to use. I'm just simply calling them fun. I think if you can make an encounter, a situation when initiative is happening and you're in combat-based timing, if you can make that as a DM more fun, it's going to become more memorable. It's going to become more exciting and so on. So what I'd like to do is just simply show you a couple of it's more of my ramble, my thought process, my mind on paper or on screen here of what I might go through to try and elevate an encounter, to elevate a fight and make it more fun. So let's jump to it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how sort of free form this goes, right? I'm going to open up D&D Beyond. I have all of the content. I bought the Legendary Bundle Christmas of 2018. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply look through the monster manual. We have a lot of, actually I'm going to go this way. We have a lot of monsters here. All right. There are 70 pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use an online randomizer, I guess. D&D Dice Roller. Sure. Let's see if this one works. Cool. Let's roll D100. Let's see, anything 71 and above, I'll just re-roll it. So, boom, 64. So, what that means is I'm going to go to page 64. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 monster creatures on page 64, according to the monster, not the monster manual, but the monster interface on D&D Beyond, because of course we're looking at, there's some things here in the basic rules or the regular monster manual. This Venom Troll is from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. It shows you, this Victoro Castellanter is from Waterdeep Dragon Heist. But 19 is a good number, right? It makes it nice and even. Anything, if I roll a 20, I'm going to re-roll it. I'll now roll a d20, and let's just see what randomly comes out. Yes! Clearly I need to play D&D today. Let's do it again. A 12. Cool. All right, so I got a 12. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's a violet fungus. Cool. What are the tips and tricks that you can use to maybe get through this thing, to make this interesting, to make the encounter more fun? So if my PCs, for whatever reason, are going to fight this violet fungus, it's interesting that there's not a whole lot to it. There's not a lot of background detail and lore. It's a low CR, right? If I had pulled up a CR 23 thing randomly, you're going to see a much longer chart, spell list, legendary actions, layer actions. There's a little more detail. If it had pulled up an iconic creature, a beholder, a mind flayer, frost giants, or a red dragon or something, there's a lot more to go off of because we have already this, whether we influence off of Smaug from Lord of the Rings, you know what I mean? We have all these ideas of what might make that encounter more interesting and more memorable based on media and film and what's out there. For a violet fungus, maybe there's not as much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and screenshot this guy. I'm going to jump over to Photoshop in here. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I crop this guy out. And this is what this paper, this document that I'm making here on screen is what I would most likely have with me at the table. I would print this out. Okay. So we're always going to have this guy somewhere over here, okay? And that's just my reference point. Let's take a look at it. It did mention on the little tab, Underdark right there, okay? So, all right, fungus, right? Where's that stuff going to grow? Dark, dank places. Coming back to it. All right, so we have a medium plant. It's a plant. We got to know that to begin with. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set out some bullet points, okay? And what it does is it gives me a sort of some direction, some things that I know that I need to cover. It's a plant, unaligned. So what do I need to do to make it evil? We've got, what else is there? Okay, it's immune to blind, deaf, and frightened. Well, it's kind of this non-sentient thing, so kind of makes sense. There's not a lot to it. It's more instinctual. Instinctive? Instinctual. So we have a real low CR. We're not going to modify too much here. You want to be careful with just padding numbers. The DMG has some suggestions on things like this, but I'm not just going to make him an AC 10 for no reason and a 79 hit points and a speed of 70 feet, and he's got fly, and you know what I mean? I'm not just going to start throwing traits in here. That's not the way I'm going to make him more interesting. What I'm usually going to do is I'm going to incorporate the environment, and I'm just going to incorporate the place where you fight him. Not everything is just this floating sphere, you know, what is it, Final Fantasy style, where the world goes whatever the Final Fantasy music is, right? And you've got this violet fungus floating in the middle of nothing, and it's I go, you go, because this guy's going to get annihilated. You're barely going to miss unless you roll a 1. He has a 5 AC. He has almost no hit points. He's not a huge threat, right? But by putting down onto the battle mat what the terrain looks like, what are the other interesting features? Are there certain timers? Are there certain things that you can kind of look into that might change this encounter? Those are the things that, as I said in the beginning, make it more challenging, make it more unique, make it more interesting, and therefore make the fight more fun. And that's our goal here. So we've got false appearance. While the violet fungus remains motionless, it is indistinguishable from an ordinary fungus. Okay, so he's got this very surprise, sneak, hidden attack. He's got 1d4 rotting touch attacks. Very cool. So you roll a d4. All right, he can have, let's say, max 4 rotting touch attacks, which very hard to hit. So he doesn't have a big, it's very hard for him to hit. He doesn't have a big attack bonus. He does have reach, though. Okay, he's medium sized. It's a plant, so, you know, lashes out there with a vine or a branch. 1 creature, and it's 1d8 necrotic. So for a 1/4 CR, and the DMG does tell you, you know, when you're building that encounter of, this is not the intention of this video series, is showing you how to build a challenging encounter. It's how to take whatever you have and make it more interesting, okay? You may want to incorporate multiple, right? Because it may take 4 of them to equal like a CR of 1 or something like that. So how many you have is up to you. But with a single one potentially making 4 attacks at 1d8 damage per round, that can end up being a really lethal combat. So he's got many attacks, potentially. Okay, now here's the thing. This is what it already has me thinking. It's kind of underneath this point. It's underneath the many attacks thing. I'm thinking if he makes upwards of, let's say, 4 attacks on the d4 I roll and I get a 4. If he makes 4 attacks every round, he still is not rolling he doesn't have a big modifier, right? So I've got to roll pretty high. If you just have even a level 1, maybe not level 1 because he's not going to have full plate, right? But you have lower level members of your party, and a couple of them have, you know, chain shirt or half plate or something like that. I'm still, even with 4 attacks, I'm still going to miss over 50% of the time. That's not a very interesting, you know, he misses, go, your turn. So what I'm thinking of is his attacks hit something else. And I guess that's the beauty of this sort of free-form brainstorm session, where I randomly chose the monster, as you saw, and now I have to kind of have the wheels turning in my head and come up with something cool. I want him to hit something else. That's everything for me. That is the meat and potatoes of this video here. That's where I want to go with it, all right? He's got multiple swings every round, okay? Maybe he might have 1, but still, there's a chance. So what it does is it's now, if I'm rolling and I'm attacking, you know, tactically, the group gets the tank, the fighter in front, and he's got an AC 17 or 18. When I roll that d4 for the rotting touch ability, and they can tell that I'm not hitting unless I roll a 16 or better, that d4 loses its umph. That d4 roll loses its excitement or its danger. because it doesn't matter if I roll a 1 or a 4. Sure, I'm getting more attacks, but they're figuring, whatever, let him attack 4 times. He's really not going to hit the fighter anyway. You know, he still needs to roll, like, he's going to miss 80% of the time. But now, if he's hitting something else, not a PC, and that something else that he's hitting is causing a global or a large environmental threat, that D4 roll becomes significantly more epic, right? Now they don't want to see that 4 because it's like, oh my gosh, he rolled a 4. You know, that thing is going to hit 4 of those things, and those things are a problem. So you see where I'm going with that is make this aspect of it. That's the thing that stood out initially to me is you don't have a high CR. Like I said, low armor class, not a lot of hit points, barely moves. He's blinded beyond that radius, whatever. But it's the fact that this low level 1/4 challenge rating, you're not going to find something that potentially has 4 attacks around. Use that to your advantage. So what I'm going to do is we create this cavern. Okay, there's an entrance over here, and then we'll move it over here. Let's go a little bigger so I don't noodle it too much. All right, they reach into this sort of cavernous area. There might be a door, like sort of a makeshift. There's a wooden frame to it, but there's definitely just a stone door sort of just smashed and wedged into this frame. So that's their exit point. Okay? That maybe is where they're going. They're coming from this long cavernous area. There's some debris, you know, junk and rock and stuff. You've got your stalactites, stalagmites, you know, things up and down in the floor all over the place, right? You've got all this good stuff. And then you have these, you know, these crusted... I'm reminded of Diablo or something like that, one of the levels. And I'm reminded of that because I was playing on, like, Hell Hardcore Challenge mode, where if your character dies, remake a new one, start over, he's gone forever. And I went like link dead, or my internet went out. So you've got these like spore colony cluster. Almost think of a reef or underwater. And you've got like these barnacles, right? So whatever. You've got all this stuff along the edges, on the walls. And somewhere in here are these fungus, this violet fungus. All right, so there's certainly some illumination. There's this purple glow over here, right? And they need to navigate their way. The PCs are going to walk through whatever path, right, they need to in order to get wherever it is they're trying to go. Okay, now, yes, I would make this and print this out and bring this to the table. I don't want to railroad the PCs and say that's where they have to walk, but it's the idea. So if I want them to kind of go into this road a little bit, right? I'm kind of doing exactly what I just said you shouldn't do, which is railroad them. I can easily have this sort of chasm thing going on, right? Where there's this raised up cliff edge or something like this. And they can walk down like the center. You know? They can walk down the center of it all. Like almost like you're walking down through a valley. But this is all underground, right? This stuff is horrible. So this passageway leads directly into this sort of valley. Okay? And this is right, I'm going to give you some shading. Now, I know I'm noodling the art of this a lot, but it's important because what it does is it's keeping my mind flowing. And that's the key here, right? I went completely free form by randomly choosing the monster. I want to stay in this completely chilled out mode. You know, I want to stay in this relaxed atmosphere because it keeps me... I'm not getting into a logic method yet, right? Once I stop and sort of correct oh, is that right? Or once I get into that logic analytical mode, you lose the freedom of the creativity at that point, right? And there may be some, what is Bob Ross's thing? There may be some good bits that are lingering in there creatively. So I made it a little darker. You could see that I want them to get to this kind of path, right? So I want them to navigate their way through all this crap. And in here, there's always a big visual library I have of things I've played or seen or remember. in here, in this valley, there's, let's go with a different color. I moved all my stuff around, so I've got to kind of get a little bit used to... Actually, we need the purple, right? It's violet, so that's what we're talking about. So let's do this. Let's put on a new layer, though. And we're going to use just a sort of subtle color, a hint. Now, yes, that could be sort of the red flag for the people, for the PCs, of there's this valley and it's glowing purple. Yeah, we're going to go down that way, right? But anyway, this is where the violet fungus is sort of living, within this, all of this purple. Okay, let's go real dark. So they're in here somewhere. There's a bunch of them, right? But remember, we're going to follow this same sort of aesthetic of these barnacle things. Okay? Which is where like a massive colony of them live. Now, this is a cheap way out, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to create sort of a, what I call a bottleneck or a stopgap. And I'm going to do straight up Kratos God of War video game style. Until you overcome these funguses, this door doesn't open. So it's kind of one of those, there's spawns of monsters, and when you finish the last monster, you magically look around and the door unwedges. So I said that there's this stone wedged into this wooden frame, right? So you've got this wood frame. I know I'm drawing purple, whatever. You've got this wood, right? This wooden door frame. Okay? And then wedged within the middle of it is just someone just smashed this stone door into the middle, just wedged it in there. And now these barnacle things, these purple things here, have crusted over everywhere. And it's just this hardened mushroom world, right? And they've become like harder than granite, and they've just hardened over, you know, crusted over like diamond. And maybe they're even crystalline, or, you know what I mean? They have that, the rogue might look at them and it's like, that's sparkling. Like, if I chipped away at it, is it worth something? And I'm reminded of like rock salt or rock crystals or something. So anyway, they've hardened. And when you sort of release the creatures, those things sort of get back to this permeable, soft mushroom feel, like you would cook. And that enables you to kind of push the door open. So you don't open the door. Door opens when all baddies are dead. Okay? So I want you to navigate your way through here. We've got this mushroom fungus. And what I'm going to do is, when I roll that 1d4, these funguses will attack the PCs, but on a miss. Every miss, I know it's more die rolls, I get it. But every miss, maybe I roll 50% chance on miss to hit a spore colony. And then spore colony is 1d8 necrotic, and air hardens the door. Like you see, you know, kind of like when you, what is it, the seeds of a dandelion, blow it in the wind, and just there's this wisp of just filth and pollution that just fills the air near the PCs. You know, all the PCs are over here, and it just makes its way towards the door, and it hardens, and you can hear this like crusting happening at the door. And it reminds the players quickly, they quickly get informed that every time these things miss us, it possibly smacks its large fungus vine against the wall, and it splatters this, think of a zit that just got popped. It's nasty, right? Like, describe it this way. Give it its fungus. Give it this filthy description. It pops that thing, and then that creates 1d8, you know, maybe in an area effect, 15-foot radius, whatever. So fine, the PC's deck save that. But it's the spores that sort of float around in all directions that harden the door. And the PCs quickly learn that every time they miss, that door becomes more and more sealed. And it's making us linger in this room longer. And there's the timer of the room, right? The longer you're in the room, more fungus come alive. Remember this, while the violet fungus remains motionless, it's indistinguishable. So this cavern down here, the floor, the walls, we're talking 15,000 mushrooms. But the longer you linger, right? Maybe every round you roll, or every round you just simply say, you know, you fix it. So you don't have to keep making, because I got to roll here, I got to roll here, I got to roll to hit, right? Maybe you just say every round, 4 violet fungus spawn. And you can see how it just keeps repeating itself. So I'm going to kind of start to, I know this has been really long already, I'm going to start to wrap it up. I've got a client on the way here, so I've got to end the video anyway. But here's the overall gist of it. Randomly chose a violet fungus. I created this cavernous area. I want them to funnel through there. Up here is just horrible nastiness, right? All that residue, that pollution is up here. That's a filthy, you know, it's like AE necrotic damage all the time. What is Boromir's, you know, the very air up there is a poisonous fume. So you can't breathe that up there. And then they have to make some climb checks, and it's slippery, and, you know, they don't really want to climb a fungus wall anyway. So they're navigating their way through this pattern, through this valley. But as they do, these violet funguses, just a few, attack. And the door is hardened, our way out sealed. They start to pick up and figure out that as they kill these things, the hardened crust on the door starts to lessen, so they can get the door open. But every time the violet fungus misses, it cracks more spore colonies, which creates this AE necrotic damage, which also further hardens the door, which makes us linger, and it becomes this sort of cycle. There's a lot of ways you can go with that, but the point is not exactly the nuances and details of whether you make a 50% chance on a miss. It breaks just the idea that you took something very simple and you made it into much bigger than it is without changing too many of the mechanics, right? Because now maybe the PCs are like, I don't want him to miss me. I want him to lay dormant. So now this encounter has gone into, it's not even a fighting encounter anymore. We just need to make our way through as quietly as possible, or maybe get up here, so that those things don't have a chance to miss, which are respawning more spore colonies and hardening the door further. How can we just dimension door or get away from here to the door quickly and break through whatever's there? I've rambled enough. I hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned for some more in the Fun Fights video series. I'm Rich the Lich. Thank you all for watching. Take care.